This is Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast with your host, Nicholas Acosta. Nick sits down with guests to talk about real estate and how it works. Reach him at downtown.expert on Facebook and Instagram, or his website, www.downtown.expert, or call or text him at 407-508-8809. Enjoy the episode.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Nicholas Acosta, your host of the podcast, Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast, coming to you live from downtown Orlando, Florida. Today, I have Mike Synthetic, President and CEO of Blanchard Insurance, on the show. This podcast is also brought to you by Lux Mortgage, as well as downtown.expert. Mike, good afternoon. How are you, sir?
Hey, good, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing well. I like your background. It looks like familiar to me.
Yeah.
I'm in one of the buildings that's in the picture.
I know. I'm waving at you.
In the view, right?
I wish that's what it looked like outside right now, but
right? No. Oh yeah. Well, it just cleared up here. We had some rain, pretty heavy rain downtown, and now the sun's out again down here, so it's beautiful out.
Yeah, we're getting into that part of the year again. And hopefully these temperature changes kind of even out. I mean, that was just wrecking everybody in our office with allergies and everything else for the last few weeks. You know, it's like you came into work and it was like 80 degrees, and by the time you were leaving, it's like 60 or 50 degrees. So everybody was going home with migraines. So hopefully, we start just getting on an even keel here as we get, into spring and summer. So.
No, awesome. So I wanted to ask you first today, the question that's been on my mind with some clients that I've been working with regarding a 4-point inspection and how that impacts getting insurance coverage, especially if it's like an FHA or VA or even conventional loan, obviously. How would that impact them?
Sure. Yeah. Just to go into a very abridged, brief history about the 4-point inspections and the wind mitigations. Really in Florida, in the Florida homeowners insurance market, if we can go take a step back to 2004 and 2005, after all the storms, back then, before that, I mean, writing insurance is like, it could be a 1920s house, it could be a 1950s house, or brand new construction. Insurance companies really weren't that concerned because claims were really low back then. So they weren't really concerned about asking for updates on the house. I mean, and how old the roof was. I mean, back then, a shingle roof, 30 years old, it was perfectly fine. If your hot water heater was, 40 years old, it was perfectly fine because there wasn't a lot of claims involved. So a lot of the insurance companies just asked for verbal proof of updates, and it was, up to the insured or up to the insurance agent. So there wasn't really even a lot of 4 points going around at that point in time. I mean, this is back in the day when we used to, as agents, actually go to properties, meet the realtor and do a visual inspection, take some photos, and that was kind of it. I mean, the insurance companies may have wanted to see some photos, but that was it back then. Then after that, after, 2 bad storm seasons, and then, as fraud started picking up more in Florida, they started requiring 4-point inspections, and it started becoming more frequent. And initially when they started off, and those of you who don't know what a 4-point inspection is, I'm sure a lot of people out there listening, it's a broken down version of a new home inspection. And the only thing it covers is the 4 systems in the house, which are the roof, the HVAC, or the AC air conditioner, the electrical, and the plumbing in the house. And that's the only thing it really covers. And it looks at updates. And that's what the insurance companies take a look at. And a real good hack for realtors out there: never send the full inspection to the insurance agent, knowing that the insurance agent might have the opportunity to send that directly to the insurance company. And the reason I say that is, if you send a full inspection over to an insurance company underwriter, there's always going to be some cosmetic defects, with property purchase, especially, in an older home. There may be a little bit of fascia, there may be a little bit of wood rot, there may be a little this or that, and it's just cosmetic. It can be fixed easily. But as soon as an underwriter at an insurance company takes a look at that, they're giving the thumbs down sign. Sorry. And it's, it's getting rejected. Coverage is going to be denied. So never do that. If you have to send some type of full inspection to the insurance agent, make sure just be like, look, do not send this to the underwriter, because it will kill any insurance deal like right there. Because like, again, the only thing they're really concerned with is the 4 major systems in the house. But why are you going to give them ammunition on one missing panel of siding that can be replaced like in 5 minutes? So that's one insurance hack. But it's like, now when 4 points started coming out, like I said, in the being required more, it used to be like it was on older homes. I mean, it was like, if you have a home that's built in the 40s, yes, they required a 4-point inspection. But now, as the Florida homeowners insurance crisis has gotten worse and underwriting restrictions have gotten more difficult, people have learned how to beat the system. There's more fraud going on. Now, if you have a home sometimes over 30 years old, a lot of the insurance companies are requiring 4-point inspections. And that and they are getting more. And it's not only are they requiring the inspections, but they're requiring the inspections to be in a certain format that the underwriters, can understand.
No, you're taking me back to when I had a house in Pinellas before that was built in the 20s, and I bought this in 2008. That was right before we had the big market crash with the mortgages and all that. Oh, and yeah. I remember now that you mentioned this to everybody right now on the show, that at that time, I remember them saying to me, since your house was built in 1925, it requires a 4-point. And I don't remember anybody else being able to having to do that at that time, at least that was what I was told. Yeah. So maybe a combination of many things. One could out there is fraud, but also the fact of the matter that when the market crashed for houses, maybe the insurance companies became more leery. Like, what else are they hiding from us besides trying to make these loans that people can't afford?
Oh, yeah, vacancies. I mean, that was a big thing back in 2008. We weren't affected as bad as the mortgage industry and the real estate industry, but we were getting foreclosure notices from the insurance companies, and they were canceling policies and non-renewing policies, and a lot of those properties sat vacant for long periods of time. And I mean, a lot of the mortgage companies were sending out inspectors. I had a couple of friends who did that for a living at the time. Were going out inspecting these vacant properties, and the insurance company's concern was, there's nobody living in the property, so we don't know if there's been a pinhole water leak going on for the last 2 months. We don't know if the air conditioner hasn't been turned on in 2 months and causing mold. We don't know, and that's why a lot of those inspections started coming around. So you're exactly right. And now they're, like I said, it's not only do you have the inspection, but they're breaking it down really critically. For example, we've been talking about roofs for months on end, last year and this year on this podcast about what they were requiring now. And unless you have a roof that is 15 years old or newer, you're basically dead in the water. Now, tile roofs can be an exception, but I'm talking about, the majority of roofs in Florida that are, architectural or, 3-tab shingle, composite shingles. Now, what they're also looking for on the inspection too is also useful life. So not only do they want to see it 15 years or newer, but they want to see something on there that says 3 to 5 years more life, or even beyond that. And I can tell you for a fact that even Citizens Insurance Company, which is really the insurer of last resort in Florida, infamous Citizens, now if you turn in an inspection that says there's not more than 3 years of expected life expectancy on the roof left, then they're not going to even insure you. So that's one big thing on the roofs. The other couple of things on the inspection that realtors need to pay attention to is hot water heaters. 10 years ago, it wasn't really a big deal, but they've had all these water claims from condos to single family homes to rental properties. Water claims have been the second worst claim in Florida besides the hail fraud. So what they are looking at, unless your hot water heater is 15 years or newer, it's the kiss of death. And some insurance companies were actually, until recently, were going to certain lengths where if you were buying the home and the hot water heater was over 15 years old, they were actually giving you about $500 to go towards purchasing a new hot water heater. That's how bad the problem has gotten. But now they've realized they're paying for everybody's hot water heater, so they kind of killed that deal. But yeah, hot water heaters are a big thing. Polybutylene, obviously, on the plumbing, that's always an issue. Flex gray piping, because it was a major class action lawsuit recall. But most of that's gone away now. Nobody really has that anymore. ACs. If your AC is over 15 years old, you're probably going to have issues. And on the electrical, it's electrical is still a big thing with the panels. I mean, like if you have a Federal Pacific panel, if you have one of these panels that had class action lawsuits and recalls on them for causing fires, aluminum wiring, double tapping breakers, you'll run into issues with that. So what I'm getting at, not to ramble on about 4 points, because I could probably for a year, but what you're looking for is, not only is it stating the facts there, but you better make sure there are the correct updates, the verbiage on there is correct. And if there's anything on there that says, there could be a potential issue or a hazard, if it's on there and it goes to an insurance company, it's getting declined right now. They're not making any amends. They are not making any considerations. They are not making liberal underwriting, as I call it right now. It is just, they will shut you down right now. So my advice to any realtor is whatever insurance agent you're working with, send that over and let them give you advice before it goes anywhere else, because we will tell you. And, like if it's going to work or if it's not going to work.
No, I completely agree. So what I'm getting out of this is like, as these fraudulent claims are happening, for instance, like in the building here where we live, they just made an announcement. I guess the policy for the entire building, they're coming into our units to do their annual check on the sprinkler system, like the fire suppression system. But they also recently, like I think a couple of months ago, they went into every unit with the insurance team to inspect the water heaters like you're talking about.
Yep.
Because there have been times where, like for instance, in our condo a long time ago, I think the neighbor or something, they had one of their water heater burst, and then the water came down the ceiling. Even though we're in a concrete building, water came right down the wall and into the neighbor's unit. So they check for that too. So it sounds like to me that as insurance, which clearly is evolving, and because of fraud has been on a significant rise, and so many different factors out in the world, that as they've evolved, now they're basically not putting up with anything anymore because they're not going to pay on something or cover something that could be fraudulent, and also to protect themselves as a business.
Correct. And it's in our industry, we actually call it like risk modeling. And I'm sure, you've heard that, from your days, with Progressive, on the adjusting side, but how underwriters are modeling risk now, it's almost gone to the version of what they call single risk modeling, where it's not only are they looking at a large pool of properties and saying, okay, like large, law of large numbers, like life insurance, like we're going to group all these risks into one pool, but now they are really looking at individual properties. So if you and I have a home, like let's say, I don't know, built in 1995 here in Orlando, and we're right next to each other, it used to be that, hey, we're going to take a look at Mike's home, and if Mike's home is okay, then we'll automatically extend coverage to Nick's home and we'll write him a policy. Now it's like they're going to look at my home and say, well, Mike's got an older roof, and so Nick, if he's got an older roof than Mike, then we don't want Nick. So they're looking at a lot of that single risk modeling underwriting, and it may not be apparent on the front end. And that's the other thing too, is a lot of these. Yes, can you get a policy? Well, an insurance company, can you theoretically push a policy through underwriting and get it issued? Yes. But the companies, you got to remember, even if you go out and get a 4-point inspection on a property, the insurance company is also going to come out and do a visual inspection of the property. They may even want to do an interior inspection just to confirm that that inspection is right. It could be a drone flying over your house. It could be some guy walking around your yard who looks like the bug guy knocking on the door and handing you a business card. They're going that far to those links right now to confirm it. It might not happen until 30 or 60 days later. And you're seeing a lot of this post underwriting inspections. So somebody gets issued a policy and 30 days later, they're getting non-renewed. Now, unfortunately, in our business, there is a lot of insurance agents who will push the policies through no matter what. I'm not going to name names or anything like that. But yes, they are looking at it going, I need to get this transaction pushed through by any means necessary. I will make it work. And then 30 days later, 60 days later, the homeowner is coming back getting non-renewed or canceled and winding up having to procure coverage elsewhere at a higher rate, or not even be able to get insurance maybe besides Citizens at all. So it's really a lot of that's going on too, and where we try to differentiate ourselves here at Blanchard Insurance is we do as much the carriers actually like us. They love us because what we do is we pre-underwrite everything to a max before it actually even goes to the underwriter. So the underwriters on our policies that are coming over, they know they're clean. They know we have looked at every single inspection, every single building permit ever, because the last thing I want to do is tell a client I'm sorry, your policy is getting non-renewed or canceled. Sorry, it didn't go through, and now you're paying more money. I hate cleaning up messes on the back end. I would rather go through and be very transparent with clients and our partners too, especially with the realtors and the lenders we work with. It's I don't want it to be a reflection on you because I did something just to basically, earn a commission. I don't want the home buyer to hate us both at the end of the day. And that's how we've kind of set ourselves apart.
No, I agree that you guys, I've worked with you guys several times. I completely 100% attest to that. You guys thoroughly review everything so everything's accurate and what the insurance is. It's sort of like real estate. When I make an offer for a client, I always tell my client that I'm making an offer for you based on my advice. Obviously, it's up to them to the final decision because it's the buyer. But when I put this offer in for you, I'm making an offer that I want you to get accepted. I don't want to put an offer in that I'm guessing that may get rejected or get beat out by somebody else. Same thing with insurance. So.
And I think it's a tool that a lot of realtors do use and could use a lot more, especially buyer's agents in negotiations on an older roof. I mean, if I saw a roof that was, I went to an open house because a lot of the times I just like to kind of see what's going on in the markets locally. So I'll stop by, an open house on a weekend. And I recently went to one where, the roof was it was at the end of its life. And, I talked to the seller's agent and he wasn't willing to bend on it, and I was like, well, yeah, I as a potential buyer, I may be interested, but you're going to have to at least knock $20,000 off the price because I'm going to get a new roof. And he seemed to think that, no, this is not an issue. And I'm like, yes, whoever buys this house is inheriting a major $20,000 problem. So unless, a week later, a major hurricane comes through and rips the roof off, they're paying out of pocket for this down the line. So it's a big negotiation tool, especially on those outdated electrical panels. Yeah, knock $500 to $1,000 off the price and get that replaced. I mean, hot water heaters too. Plumbing is a big issue, but if somebody's got old copper or cast iron pipes, if I was, a realtor, not saying I am, but I'd be going to the seller's agent and being like, look, I'm going to have to replumb this thing. You need to take $10,000 off the pipe because I'm going to be forced by the insurance company and any insurance company to have this done in, a certain period of time, which is going to be very short forthcoming.
No, I agree. And it makes me bring to a point real quick before we talk about something else, though. The thought of this is, they consider Florida an as-is state, and real estate agents, when buyer's agents write an offer, they write it on an as-is contract. And by no means an attorney, so I'm not giving any legal advice. But what I can see happening in the future, Mike, and you probably will agree with this, because of the insurance situation now, basically what's going to happen is that eventually what's going to happen is as-is contracts will not be acceptable, and sellers can't argue anymore. Well, they're taking the risk by buying this. Oh no, well, the buyer can't get insurance on conventional or FHA or VA because your roof doesn't have any life left, your AC is 20 years old, and your wiring is bad.
Yeah.
So those days are going to be – real estate agents, basically what I'm trying to say, like Mike's saying, is you got to change your way of thinking when it comes to making that offer and negotiation. Like, for instance, the buyer I'm working with on a house, ran into a 4-point inspection issue, negotiated for the buyer $8,000 in closing cost concessions because we ran into 4-point issues. Things like that are going to have to happen. Yeah,
absolutely. And whoever they're working with, I mean, send it over to me or send it over to the insurance agent you're working with. And I'm talking to the buyer's agents out there. We'll write up an email. We'll write up a letter that literally picks the 4-point apart and says, this is not going to fly with any insurance company. This is not going to fly, and this is not going to fly. And we can tell you, we'll list out the names of we have underwriting guides. I mean, I can literally list a matrix and tell you company A is not going to take a company B all the way down through Z and tell you, and I'll give you the company names and say, look, I mean, there are no, we've come to a day where the options are very limited. And I'm going to date myself and go back like 10 years ago and say, hey, yeah, I mean, were there a lot of companies who didn't care about the hot water heater and didn't care if your roof was over 15 years old? Absolutely, yes, or didn't care about the panels. But those number of companies has shrunk to a degree that I can tell you probably 1 or 2 companies who may not care about, a Federal Pacific panel. I can tell you 1 or 2 companies that may not care about asbestos siding. So your options are very, very limited. And that's a negotiation tool, in my opinion, for any, buyer's agent to knock down those prices, because they are ghost costs that are going to be built into, if you buy the home, this is what's going to need, you're going to have to update it. So if you're willing to do that, by all means, but why wouldn't you use that as a negotiation tactic?
Oh yeah, I can definitely see that if you didn't get if you negotiated and say
I think you hit the mute button there, Nick.
About that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, everybody. I hit the space bar by accident. I didn't know that was going to mute me. I've learned as I go. But what I'm trying to say is that before I got muted myself, is that down the road, I've talked to some colleagues in the business now, buyers agents out there, where buyers have walked away from the deal because they take the 4-point to the seller and seller agent and present it to the seller, and then the seller said, no, I'm not giving any concessions. And guess what's happened? Majority of the time now, probably 60% of the time, buyers are now walking away from deals because they know they can't get insurance on this property.
Yeah, absolutely. And the insurance, if they can get it, is going to be dramatically and drastically higher. And the other thing, I mean, if we're talking about inspections here, is on every single deal that a buyer's agent does, get a wind mitigation inspection. Take advantage of it. It wasn't supposed to be around forever, but it still is. Take advantage of it. I don't care if the home is 2 years old or 100 years old. It doesn't matter. Get the inspection. It costs $125. It literally, in some cases, cuts insurance premiums in half. Now, the credit, too, a lot of people don't know, is the credit extends for until they discontinue this program, which probably should have already been discontinued. Every year you're receiving that credit. So if you're receiving let's say you're only saving $500 with this inspection, well, you've already made $400 in the positive, but times 5 years, you've made like $2,000 in the positive, because that inspection, until they revise it or they go basically forever. Now on a 4-point, and that brings up a good point, a 4-point inspection has to be 2 years or newer. You cannot dodge that. Nowadays, it used to be like, oh, can I use the seller's 4-point from 10 years ago? No, you can no longer do that. And when they're looking at these inspections, like we were talking before, when they want to see, life expectancy of these systems, a lot of inspectors out there will do this, and I hate to say it, but they'll be very lazy about things, and they'll put unknown age, they'll put unknown life expectancy. I don't know this. Well, when you send that 4-point inspection to the insurance company or the insurance agent, it's basically useless, because the underwriter is going to look at it and go like, okay, well, we don't know how old the AC system is because you put unknown, or you put the wiring in the house, unknown. Go back to the inspector and be like, you better do some research, pull some permits, and figure out what this is. If you got to crawl underneath the sink or poke a hole in the wall to find out what it is, yes. And you need to put an age on there. You need to put the word unknown on there is going to kill any insurance deal. from going forward. And it's funny because like we see them and I'm like, this is useless. Send it back. Light a fire under their butts. They work for you, and make sure they're updated. Now, in the case of where the buyer's agent has to negotiate with the seller to, like, let's say, to update an electrical panel. If the home inspector is like not willing to go back out, or, I mean, what they should be able to do is actually take the receipts and you can send them some photos and they'll update it on their computer that night. But send them back out. Make sure they do it and put those updates in the inspection before we send it in. The days of us being able to send in a 4-point inspection and then here's a receipt from Home Depot and a random photograph, those days are gone. Insurance companies don't care. They want to see it on that uniform inspection form going forward.
No, I completely agree, and I think I think you kind of touched on it, but before we have 5 minutes left, about 5 minutes left, but about the fees attached, about the insurance policies that insurance agents sell. You want to touch on that real quick?
Yeah, and this topic recently came up in a couple of networks. It's a practice that has been going on for a long time. I personally don't agree with it. And I've seen it in this industry over the last 20 years, which is on a homeowner's insurance policy, and the agent or the broker is attaching a fee to it. I hate fees, and it could be anything like a $25 photo fee, a $25 admin fee, a $25 processing fee, or something along those lines. It's hard to tell when you're getting billed for that, but I can tell you the number one secret to getting billed for it is if you get an invoice directly from the insurance agent, and it's like, mind you, it's legal too. It's completely legal, but I feel like it's kind of like when you go to the car dealership and they're just adding these extra fees on there, and $25, and by the end of the day you got a list of all these fees that are at this long, and you really don't pay attention to it. Sometimes when people actually look at an insurance policy, they don't read it. They're just kind of like whatever the bottom number is. Now, the best way to tell is, especially on a homeowner's policy, is if you match up the number on the invoice and match up what's on the policy, because the policy is not going to insurance policy from Acme Insurance Company, or Progressive or Geico, whoever, State Farm. It doesn't really matter. But then the final number on there, let's say it's $1,000 premium after all fees, taxes that the insurance company charges, which is that's a necessity that you have to have that. But when you look at that number 1,000, and then you get this invoice from the insurance broker or the agent that doesn't say State Farm or Geico on there, but let's say it says $1,200. You got to take and that's what they're sending to the mortgage company, or that's what they're sending to you to pay that bill. You got to really ask the question of like, okay, what's this $200 I'm being charged for? And the best way to tell is if you actually get an invoice directly from the agent or broker. The invoice should come directly from the insurance company. So if I'm sending, Nick, if I'm sending you your policy from Acme Insurance Company right now, you're going to have an Acme policy declaration that says $1,000, and you're going to see an Acme Insurance Company invoice that says $1,000. It's not going to be Blanchard Insurance invoice separate that costs $1,200. And that's the easiest way to tell. And you got to imagine that, across, if agents and brokers are out there doing this like thousands of times, I mean, that's a lot of money. And it's like, they're not taking photos of your house. They're getting that off Zillow. There's processing admin fees. It's all just junk. It's all a way of just earning extra money. It does happen. It's out there a lot more than I would like. I think it's, on insurance side, we make a commission off any sale like a realtor would. And I don't believe it's unethical to me, in my personal opinion, even though it's legal. I don't like nickel and diming people for these phantom costs where I'm not really doing anything. Especially like an application processing fee, which is like, in these days with e-signature, how can I charge somebody $50 for a process that really takes 5 seconds? It's ridiculous. But that's another hack that a lot of you should look out for. And when you get into commercial insurance, the insurance brokerages, like the largest brokerages in the country, yes, I mean, there's like fees attached to policies, like an inspection fee that's coming directly from the insurance company. So the insurance companies, yes, the MGA fees that they have, their brokerage fees, their inspection fees, those are all true costs. Like, for example, like if you were to buy a commercial building, Nick, for like, let's say, your brand new real estate office brokerage, and the insurance company has an invoice that comes out to you with the policy declarations, yes, there's going to be something on there that says $150 inspection fee. But the insurance company is actually going to send an inspector to make sure your fire extinguishers and your fire alarm is up to date and monitored and blah, blah, blah. So they are incurring a cost. Now, if you get something from me that says Blanchard Insurance, $150 inspection fee, and I didn't come out and inspect your property, something's wrong, or there is some type of these phantom fees. And if you ever have a question about that, the best thing to do is ask your insurance agent or brokerage, or ask another one. Like if I saw that, if you saw an invoice from me, Nick, like that had those on there, I'd be like, and I was somebody else, I'd be like, Nick, ask somebody else besides Mike, get a second opinion. And like I said, I call it, everything we do here at Blanchard Insurance, we kind of do fearless. We're very transparent in the way we do business. And that's just my personal philosophy that we share here in this organization. And we're kind of fearless about a lot of things, like in what we do. Not that we're, jumping out of an airplane or anything like that, but we like to be transparent when a lot of our business, and I would say the great majority of it, doesn't like the transparency. So we're fearless in that regard. But I also say, hey, we're fearless as well. We're not sitting there. The last thing I want to do is go to bed at night knowing I ripped, our clients off and people off. And I just think it's ridiculous.
I completely agree. So with that, we're out of time. But is there like one word of advice to give everybody for the weekend and the week ahead to anybody out there?
Yeah. Go out and, wear your mask. And I know we touched on this last week with, seeing how things are affecting people on the anxiety and, depression, everything, from COVID. I'm not telling everybody to go out there and, join, without a mask or go to, a massive collection of people somewhere, but get out a little bit. I mean, take a walk. I mean, if there's a place you like to go that has outdoor seating, and, have a glass of wine with a loved one or a friend, do it. And I'm seeing, it's good to see. I mean, I went to a client's restaurant soft opening, one night this week, and it was so good to see people out enjoying themselves for once after a long year and taking the time to actually do it. And a good friend of mine too. I mean, like he's been working himself to death. And I had a talk with him one night. I was just like, dude, you look like you're killing yourself. And I was like, you know what? Take a night off, spend it with your family, go relax somewhere. And that's that. For my advice for people's personal health and sanity, take a little bit of time to do that.
No, I completely agree. All right, Mike. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, and everybody out there for listening and subscribing to the podcast. Thank you again, Mike.
Absolutely.
All right, sir. You have a good day and a good weekend.
All right, you too, Nick. Thanks.
Take care. All right, everybody. This has been Nicholas Acosta with the podcast Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast, coming to you live from Orlando, Florida. I'm the managing principal broker of Downtown Expert Realty, LLC. Anyways, these guys have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys soon next week, okay? Take care.
This has been Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast. Find Nick on Facebook and Instagram at downtown.expert, and also his website, www.downtown.expert, or call or text him at 407-508-8809. Thanks for listening.
Instead of spending hours or even days looking for your new home, let a Downtown Central Florida expert guide you. Hi, I'm Nicholas Acosta, and I'm here to welcome you home. Being a Florida native, I know how exciting, convenient, and stylish the downtown Florida lifestyle is. Whether you're entertaining your guests or enjoying the views, Central Florida downtown has a lot to offer you and your family. Buying, selling, or investing, I'm your Downtown Central Florida expert.